Dublin is a low-density city, with lots of single-storey housing in great areas. Street plans, also known as street votes, is a policy that involves a group of homeowners and residents jointly proposing a plan for the development of their neighbourhood. And once the plan is set, the community comes together and votes. If a certain threshold is met, the plan receives automatic planning permission. Homeowners opting out would be free to do so, though they would no longer be able to stop others from building. Yet their property values would still increase significantly due to the upzoned land, and they could always choose to densify later. Street plans are part of the wider YIMBY movement, or Yes in My Backyard, which has been gaining ground internationally as a counter-movement to the perceived bias against new construction in various cities.
People get together and they might say, okay, what if we were allowed to develop this place? Let's go with the scheme that we all are happy enough with. They say, okay, we'll say 4-storey terrace in a style that we think is fine, it's unobjectionable, like those nice Georgian terraces or Victorian terraces that you see in other parts of the city. We can put in whatever conditions we choose, like that we as residents like, and then put it to a vote. Then it becomes the law of the land, and that everyone on that street may do it.
To explore the idea, we looked for somewhere in Dublin that might make for a suitable location, and we settled on the area around Google's European headquarters near Grand Canal Dock rail station. A few streets over, we find this neighbourhood, made up of single-storey cottages, which includes Hope Street, Gordon Street, Barrow Street, and South Dock Street. In our view, 4 factors make this area a great candidate for a street plan. The land is of high value. The existing housing is almost exclusively single-storey cottages that are not protected historic structures. Grand Canal Dock rail station is only 200 metres away, so future residents have a ready-made transport link on their doorstep. And the tall buildings on the west side of Barrow Street set a height precedent for the area. To densify any area, some decisions need to be made about architectural styles. And in reality, this would be a decision for homeowners if they chose to pursue a street plan. However, purely for the purposes of stimulating discussion in this video, we made some design decisions of our own. If we look at the store, the Comptoir Irlandais in Nantes, France, above it we see a building in a recognisably French style, which includes balconies, textured stone, and a grey mansard roof. By removing these 3 subtle features of ornamentation, we can see that the building becomes very plain very quickly, while restoring them, one by one, brings the building back to life. Much of Europe's gentle density has been achieved with mixed-use buildings like this. Indeed, as has the centre of Dublin, in its famous Georgian style. And while we might not want to copy French or Georgian styles exactly, the basic model of 3 to 6 stories above a commercial concern with tasteful ornamentation is an approach that we admire on this channel. Beautiful architecture is important because it not only benefits the owner, it has a pleasing and even nourishing effect on passers-by. Additionally, local residents are less likely to object to a development that will increase the attractiveness of the area. To model an aesthetic densification in this neighbourhood, our first step was to add certain treatments to the streets, namely trees, brick-textured parking bays, and street lamps, with the street lamps containing subtly placed electric car charging points. The textured surfaces serve 2 purposes. They are first and foremost visually pleasing, and secondly they send a subtle slow down message to drivers. This area is part of the South Lots district of Ringsend, and these cottages were built in the late 19th century by James and William Beckett, the latter who was grandfather of writer Samuel Beckett. The Becketts were descended from French Huguenots, and in designing the 7-storey signature building at the Barrow Street end, we drew on French and Irish influences, with a setback and mansard roof on the top 2 floors, which allow more light to pass through to street level. The building includes various ornaments one might find elsewhere in Dublin, such as textured stone, floral arrangements, and a Georgian-style entrance. This western block would be the most dense of the 3 in the development, with heights and levels of commercial activity descending gradually as we move inward to the residential area. Some of the buildings are tall and narrow, due to the widths of the original houses, similar to what one might find in Amsterdam, but adjacent homeowners may choose to build jointly in order to achieve economies of scale. Now to the numbers. The median house value in this area is $450,000, while a modern 2-bedroom apartment is valued slightly higher at $525,000. The estimated cost of construction of a 4-storey apartment building is $840,000, which would have a market value of roughly $2.1 million, yielding a gross surplus of 1.26 million, or a net surplus of 810,000 in addition to the original house value. This surplus would increase to 1.13 million for 5 stories. Conservatively marking these surpluses down by 10% still presents an attractive proposition to homeowners. Homeowners could use this surplus to secure tenant approval with generous compensation, rental reductions, and temporary accommodation during construction.
It's basically this idea that when homes are built, huge amounts of value are created. It's not right that the developer should and the buyer should get all that value. It's fair enough that the residents should share in it. So it's a scheme that kind of redistributes some of the surplus that's being created from building homes and gives some of it to the developers, some of it to the government in form of taxes, some of it to the buyers, and some of it to the local residents.
What about the potential downfalls and criticisms? Wouldn't this lead to gentrification? Gentrification generally involves dispersing a community from an area as new properties are bought up by wealthier people. However, in street plans, residents could remain in situ and lead decisions in shaping their neighbourhood. Another criticism might be that apartments costing roughly $500,000 wouldn't help disadvantaged people. However, boosting the supply of homes is the only surefire way to bring down prices, making housing truly affordable. Our exploration of how this idea could work in this neighbourhood is by no means saying it should. That's up to those pursuing a street plan. And while it might not be favoured here, it might find favour elsewhere. If just 1% of Dublin's neighbourhoods pursued a street plan, it would put a real dent in our housing crisis. What do you think? We've included a link below to the policy paper that inspired this episode, and we welcome your comments on the concept of street plans and housing more generally. Slán go fóill.